Okay, we are live, but where did Heidi go? Oh, we lost Heidi. Well, I'll stand here for a second. I don't know where Heidi disappeared to. And I can't really moderate this panel, but hi, hello. Well, why don't we do like, hi everyone, welcome to the creator-owned panel. We had our moderator, Heidi MacDonald, here, and then she disappeared, so hopefully she will magically reappear really quickly. But in the meantime, why don't we introduce our panelists? We'll start over here with our Shannon Branden. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Oh, there she is. She's on her way back.
Hi, y'all.
Yeah.
Shannon Waters and Branden Boyle-White are sharing an avatar thanks to some technical issues. So we will answer questions with this is Shannon and this is Branden.
So then you'll also hear my voice, Branden's voice. It's a new VR experience for everyone.
Yes.
the Hydra-headed avatar.
Yeah, so your patience is appreciated.
Thank you for the emojis. Yay.
I love the fact that we have two people embodying one avatar. It's really only in the metaverse. And then David, why don't you tell us about you? There she is. We have Heidi back. Yay! So Heidi, just to let you know, we are live, and I introduced Shannon and Branden to explain that they're in one avatar, and then David was getting ready to introduce himself. But if you want to come up to the center, and you can get started. And you might be muted, and make sure you amplify yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that. I got kicked out of VR. You know what happens. It does happen.
It happens.
I got kicked out a little bit. So, but
can you
I'm
move
back.
up towards the front a little bit more?
Sure. There you go.
I'm here too, Heidi. I'm actually right next to you. It's Ryan.
Okay.
Hey, David.
Hello.
Hey, Shannon, Branden. And I'll be helping as well. We're here for support,
guys.
Nice.
Well, that's good. Well, Shannon, Branden, and David, glad I got back. I came back to the virtual world here just in time. So welcome everyone to this discussion about creator-owned comics. So let me just start. It's my second panel of the day. So let me just ask you, David, Shannon, and David and Shannon Branden, just what is your experience of VR? Do you own an Oculus, or is this your first time in a virtual world?
This
David?
is absolutely. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go.
Go ahead, Brand. Okay. This is Branden, not David. Yeah, this is absolutely my first time in any sort of VR world. I think same for Shannon.
Oh yeah, absolutely same for Shannon. This is both of our first times.
So we're just doing it on our MacBook.
Yeah, we haven't we don't have an Oculus, so thank you for your patience with our old-fashioned attendance.
But it's very beautiful, and I love seeing everybody's avatar, and that you guys are waving out there in the audience and sending little reactions. It's super cool.
It's very cute.
You can do emojis
David, how about you?
With your avatars. Show them some love.
Absolutely. Well, let me just ask, I know you got introduced a little bit. We're talking a little bit about yourself, but let's just ask a little bit about your road to creator-owned comics. And David, I know you've done all kinds of things in your life, and journalism and just everything. So yeah, how did you, just the short version, but how did you get here to, be making comics?
And I had so much fun writing it, the first issue, that I wrote an outline, and I had so much fun doing that I approached an artist, and I had so much fun with that. I said, oh, I'll pitch it just to, say that I pitched it. And a publisher picked it up, and suddenly a chill ran down my spine because I had to actually write this book. And I've been lucky enough to be doing that ever since.
Awesome. Shannon, I know you've done also all kinds of things in comics. So, how did you get to this spot yourself?
Yeah. So I was a senior editor at Boom Studios. I was at Boom for about 12 years. While I was there, I ran the Boom imprint for a number of years. And then I founded and ran the Boombox imprint for a number of years, which was a real ball, which was a real delight. Comics editing kind of lets you put your hands in every pot. And then, obviously I did Lumberjanes for a very long time as the writer and co-creator, and had this amazing kind of inspired idea with my partner Branden for Hollow, which is out next week in comic shops everywhere, which is crazy. We had this idea in late 2019, and so I've done a little bit of everything. My first job in comics was copy editing at Tokyo Pop in 2007. Also waylaid by the recession. Very, very funny how all that stuff works out. But that is how I found my way to creator-owned comics.
And that was non-owned comics at Tokyo
Yes,
Pop.
correct. The farthest away.
Shade,
Yes.
The shade.
Woof.
The shade.
Yeah. We all got laid off after 8 months. Snap, snap, snap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Branden, you are new to comics. Hollow is your first one. So how did you get drawn in?
Well, I'm a fiction writer. That's my background. I've got an MFA in fiction, and I was working in short stories and laboring on, my big important novel that I finally ended up setting aside when I realized it was too big and maybe not that important. So it was a great learning experience, and it's still a love of mine. But I also fell in love with something else a few years back, and it was this comic editor and creator and writer who had this big series called Lumberjanes. And I got together with Shannon, and that was really my big learning experience about comics. It was, I had read like the big graphic novels that get assigned in, schools, Persepolis, Fun Home. But Shannon just really blew open this whole world for me as a reader. And so I was reading all this cool stuff all the time. And like she said, in late 2019, we had this idea for a graphic novel, and just started tossing it around, and pretty quickly realized it was something we wanted to do together. And so now I wrote a graphic novel with pretty much the best teacher anybody could ever have if they were going to set about doing that sort of thing.
She took to it like a duck to water. She was a very good graphic novel writer. It was an excellent time. We had a really, I've been saying, like, if you can spend the part of a horrible global worldwide pandemic trapped in your house writing something really fun and funny and sweet with somebody that you care about very much and love, it's a great time. I recommend it.
Well, Shannon, congratulations. You're bringing, new creators into comics by any means necessary.
Oh my God, always, unfortunately. Oh God.
That's amazing. Well, you both have your most recent projects, I believe. Well, David, you have a lot of projects, but one of your most recent projects is The Oz, which is Wizard of Oz via Black and done Sleepy Hollow. So you've both taken these classic stories and reimagine them. But David, tell us a little bit about the Oz and how that came about.
Yeah. Well, that series was one of the first. Here, I'll amplify my voice. So yeah, for those who aren't familiar with my book, The OZ, I like to pitch it as what if the Hurt Locker took place in the Wizard of Oz? And for me, every time I finish a project, I kind of come into it with like a bucket list of things that I want to accomplish. And I found that every time I finish a project, I've added more items than I've crossed off. And so when I had finished writing my first few books, Spencer and Locke and Spencer and Locke 2 and Going to the Chapel, they were all grounded crime stories. And so I said that the next things that I wanted to do would be sort of a bigger scale, sci-fi and fantasy. And fantasy I've always gravitated to a little bit more. There's so much about metaphor and theme and characterization that could kind of inform the rules of the world. And so for me, it just kind of started by writing down just what are my favorite fantasy properties, just to kind of get a sense of what my influences are. And I remember writing The Wizard of Oz, and my computer froze, and the cursor was stuck in the word Oz. And I remember thinking like, oh, like what if that was an acronym for something? And I thought the occupied zone, and immediately the idea kind of just hit me like a bolt of lightning, and pretty much exactly like this cover that our artist Ruben Rojas delivered. Sort of Dorothy as this soldier with this 1,000-yard stare, and this sort of Titanic Tin Man who's been blown up and rebuilt so many times standing beside her. And it really continues to be a labor of love. I mean, we pitched this to a well-known publisher, and we made it pretty much to the 1-yard line. And unfortunately, there was sort of another big fantasy epic by a much more established team that was pitched at the same time. But I'll never forget that editor was very kind to me and said, you should not give up on this book. It really has something, and you're only a victim of timing. And so we kind of forged ahead with it and wound up self-publishing it on Kickstarter. And we're really happy with the response. It won a Ringo Award last year, and we're just very happy to be here.
That's great. I mean, what was it about the Oz books that attracted you to the idea?
Yeah, they're very archetypical. I for me, it's always, how do you build a bigger table to invite more readers? I don't want to preach to the choir. I want to draw in new faces. And I feel like you'd be hard pressed to find iconography that's more recognizable than the Wizard of Oz. Everybody kind of knows that 4-man band of Dorothy, Scarecrow, Tin Man, the Lion. I guess you can count Toto as sort of the 5th member. Everybody knows it's just cultural osmosis. And for me, it was also just the core concept really kind of justified it to me. It's very easy to kind of do just an edgy version of whatever famous thing, and you can do it for shock value's sake, but I don't think that has a lot of track record. I think you really need to actually justify this edgy take. And for me, I was thinking about the Wizard of Oz, the story. Dorothy kills 2 wicked witches in like a week and convinces the Wizard of Oz to leave, and then she just clicks her heels and splits. And I remember as I was thinking about it, I was like, that's portrayed as a happy ending, but it's not. I mean, that's Baghdad. And so thinking about it like that, I was like, oh, that's a power vacuum waiting to happen. What happens to this country when the dictator is toppled and the person who did the toppling didn't really have a plan and just leaves? And so that really became very interesting, and that really kind of gave the concept, I think, some more legs, and some more themes to explore, both sort of the psychological costs of people who are in the trenches and people who are sort of the bystanders of all this, but also kind of what how do you tackle something as big as a national power vacuum, and can that be tackled at all?
Well, I don't know if you've read all the Oz books. Well, I mean, there's a lot of Oz books.
Yes.
But, I mean, some of them are quite gruesome.
And is a big fan of the Oz books.
Yes.
Yes. Well, Shannon and Branden, our first question of the Hollow obviously reimagines Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. So I got to ask, are either of you from Tarrytown?
No, this is Branden. Neither of us are from Tarrytown. I'm from Palm Springs, California. Shannon's from Northern Arizona. My family, though, on my mom's side, from Niagara Falls, New York. So, a few hours away, but there is a little bit of upstate heritage in me, at least.
But it is funny, the initial kind of seed that became Hollow was conceived of in Tarrytown. We took a trip there in 2019 and in fall of 2019, and we were there kind of during the book, the period of time that is portrayed in the book, which is like, peak Headless Horseman season in a town that is obsessed with the Headless Horseman 365 days a year. And we really got to see how intensely the town loves this story and how seriously they take it. And it was our last night in Tarrytown, and we started kind of buffeting around the idea that would eventually become Hollow.
Yeah. So for audience members who don't know, Sleepy Hollow is the famous Sleepy Hollow, where the Headless Horseman legend is that we all know and hear about, is a village that's part of this bigger town called Tarrytown that up till the 1880s Sleepy Hollow sort of like struck out on their own to sort of get their own postal addresses, etc., so they could really super give themselves over to honoring this historic story and the Headless Horseman, kind of like fun celebratory goofiness that we all super love. So yeah, hence Heidi's question.
Yeah, can you hear me? My earphone just popped out and I'm trying to find it. Can you hear me?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
definitely.
Good. I can do it with one. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I was going to say you nailed it because I live in New York City, and every once in a while we do go to, yeah. So we do go to Tarrytown around Halloween, and they could not possibly play up their Sleepy Hollow this any more than they do. And why not? It's very Halloweeny there, obviously. Washington Irving was very influenced by it, and it fits perfectly. But yeah, I would say what were the elements of the story? How did you adapt them to modern sensibility, this classic tale?
I mean, do you want to take it? Okay, Shannon has given me the nod to take it, so Branden is going to take it. Oh man, I mean, look, there's elements of the original story that if you leave them out, no reader, watcher, and nobody who's immersing themselves in the story in whatever medium is going to come away satisfied if they're not there, right? And so obviously the Headless Horseman, you want some of that really good, fall ambiance. The book is our book is set in the month of October, so it's Halloween is everywhere. We've got a countdown clock to the 31st. I'm gonna try and stay away from spoilers, but definitely you need a chase through the woods. It's the iconic, the horseman chases somebody through the woods, so we knew we had to work in just those really iconic fan favorite moments from the original story and kind of the adaptations that have come afterward that people are familiar with. And then we had fun with some that are a little more kind of Easter eggy for people who maybe are a little deeper than just topical fans. So, our main character's name is Isabel Crane, which obviously is, a fun nod to Ichabod Crane. And she's very scholarly because he was the school teacher who was coming into the Hollow to, teach at the schoolhouse. And so we just have little things from the classic story that we use to inspire us throughout. So the hope is that people who are either completely new to to the legend, or are like, yeah, I saw the Tim Burton movie and that's kind of all I know, will enjoy the book as much as somebody who is like me, who's like, I read the Irving short story every October because it's one of my favorites. So yeah.
We had a really good time playing with kind of the trio aspect, the love triangle aspect, and turning it on its head of the original story, the Brom Bones, Ichabod Crane, and Katrina Van Tassel structure. We had a real good time kind of turning it on its head for both a contemporary audience and just general things we love in characters.
Yeah.
Love to see in characters. There's a really sweet romance, like a sweet queer romance. It's very funny, and hope we pulled it off.
Well, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the process of making your comics, and you know, David, you kickstarted the OZ, and you know, Hollow has a publisher, but how do you go about finding your collaborators? And obviously, Shannon and Branden, you collaborated on as writers, but I mean, like with artists, you know, I mean, I know a lot of aspiring creators, especially writers. I mean, that's a big hurdle to get over, you know, finding a collaborator, finding an artist. So what are some of the methods that you use for that?
Boy, you know, for me, it's an ongoing process. You know, Twitter is your friend, Tumblr is your friend, Instagram is your friend. And for me, it's less of a, I need to find somebody for a particular project, and it's more, I'm constantly looking for new artists, and I bookmark them. And sometimes then I'll think of a project, and then I can reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in working with you. The challenging part is of course, it's always doing your first comic. And I do think that like anthologies are really helpful in that regard. Where you're able to at least show a potential collaborator once you've done an anthology story, hey, like I can do the work and I'm looking to do something more. That was something that I actually did not do, but I've seen a lot of other people do that. I was lucky enough to sort of have Newsarama as my calling card, so I could say, hey, I'm taking the plunge. But yeah, I spend all the time looking at new artists, and that winds up being very helpful because for me, it's so rare. You know, the timing is as such. You have to email somebody and you have to say, hey, are you available to work on this? Are you interested in working on this? Can we make the budget work? And the answers are not always yes. And so sometimes it takes a few tries, a few different bits of outreach to find your collaborators. And Heidi, you said it best. It is probably the biggest hurdle to making comics, is sort of assembling your garage band of collaborators. But I think that's almost like the bar for entry. This is a project. These projects, at least to me, are always going to be a marathon. So if you're not committed enough to find a particular team to work with, you might not make it to the finish line in the first place.
Shannon, how do you how do you find artists?
I mean, when you, as an editor, you know, you are looking for artists just all the time. That's a huge part of your job, is that you are, like David was saying, on Instagram, on Tumblr, on Twitter, following people, meeting folks at conventions. You know, I buy a lot of mini comics. I buy a lot of zines, love them. You know, doing portfolio reviews, that kind of thing. And so, you know, as an editor and as any sort of creator, that's kind of the best way you can assemble that, that idea, both, you know, in the specific, right? Like both this kind of specific artists that you love their vibe or you'd love to work with them, but also the kind of look and feel that you feel like fits your work, you know, which is going to be different for every single project. And so when you are building a team, you can go, you know, I really like this look and feel. I really like this vibe. And you can kind of see, you know, who they're following, who they're amplifying, and get a real idea of what's out there, and kind of the great potential of comics. You know, the beautiful thing about our medium is that there are so many different ways to make a comic and so many different ways for a comic to look. And, you know, every project requires a different look and feel. We got very lucky with our kind of our artist collaborator, the third member of our trio, Bernice Nell, who is our artist on Hollow. She's the only artist. Is that Barry? Is that Barry waving? Oh my God. Barry.
Send up an emoji if that's you.
If that's you, Barry. That's you waving.
There's an avatar waving. It might not be our
It
artist.
might not be Barry, but I do know that Barry knows about this. In any case, Barry was exquisite to work with, an extraordinary collaborator, and the only artist in the world who loves to draw horses. So a real coup for us, personally. But yeah, you know, it is a process every single time, and it requires, I do think it requires an investment kind of in the medium, not just on an individual basis, but, you know, getting a sense of what you want and what you want your comic to feel like.
And it's very competitive because people are, you know, they're busy. I mean, they're booked
Absolutely.
up. You know, they're working on a book. You know, I've edited some projects too, and you know, it can just, sometimes you get your dream artist, but just is that lucky little moment where they have like a week. And they're like, oh yeah, I'll do something. You know, I'll do a cover
yeah,
for
absolutely.
you this 1 week. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you and Heidi, I mean, you've been writing about comics for a very long time as well, and you know how wild everybody's schedules get.
Yeah, it is. It's truly wild. You know, how do you find a publisher? You know, I mean, that's the other part of it. I mean, there are so many options available now. You know, you have Kickstarter, you do have work for hire. David, I know you're doing a bunch of work for hire stuff for Marvel now. And, you know, there's publishers that offer different kinds of deals and everything. I mean, do you think of specific projects for specific publishers also, or specific, you know, business models, or is it just, you know, by any means necessary, once again?
Yeah, I think for me, it's always about just finding a good home for the project, you know, and sometimes that means Kickstarter, and sometimes that means teaming up with a publisher. But for me, I tend to gravitate towards, there's certain projects that I'm so interested in that, you know, like I can't sleep if I'm not working on it in some capacity. And so I think I probably have 4 or 5 projects in the works right now in that vein. And some of them, yeah, like some of them, publishers approached me saying, hey, like we have this kind of kernel of an idea. Is this of interest to you that you could kind of flesh out and do something? And that, I guess, is sort of a hybrid, a little more of a hybrid creator-owned model. But other times, you know, like Scout's Honor over at Aftershock, I had pitched them kind of a number of ideas that I was really interested in. And Scout's Honor was one of the newer ideas I hadn't really done as much development on. And of course, that was the idea that Aftershock really gravitated towards. And that was kind of a fun process of being able to kind of delve in and explore this high concept with the publisher. And sort of, it was a different kind of collaboration that I was used to. But yeah, you know, sometimes it's very scattershot, and something that I think is perhaps an unfortunate cliche in the industry, and I certainly have experienced it, is, you know, oftentimes your first book deal is not great. You know, it's sort of figuring out, like, what are you willing to give up in order for the book to maybe see a wider audience. That's why I do think Kickstarter is really interesting disruptor, in the fact that you can kind of make your money, sometimes even more so than a publisher, without having to give up any particular, say, IP rights or anything like that. But of course, the cost of that is you're doing the self-publishing. You know, you're not going through a distributor channel. So it's pros and cons. As you get more established in the industry, you'll start to lose more of the cons and gain more of the pros.
Shannon?
I think David's kind of right on. The best way to make comics is to make them.
Yep.
Editors and publishers often are looking for somebody who, not necessarily, having had done like a full graphic novel or anything like that, but looking for somebody who has made comics, has sat down and completed comics, whether they're short, zine type comics or mini comics or web comics or anthologies or Kickstarters. It's proof that you can do the work. And I agree with David. Like Kickstarter is an incredible tool for folks, as the internet is, for getting their work both published and out there. That's editors are looking and publishers are looking for folks that are making comics already. And so I think that's a huge, putting yourself out there. That kind of the old reliable advice applies. Putting yourself out there on Twitter, putting yourself out there at conventions. Again, portfolio reviews is a great way to get your work in front of an editor. But often it is just making comics for fun.
Yeah. And speaking of opening things up, we do want to get some questions from the audience. If you have a question, I believe you can raise your hand.
Yes, let me turn that on. So now if you look down to your right, you'll see raise hand. And if you click that button, I will be able to call on you and give you the microphone so that you can ask your question. Does anybody have a question?
Well,
I think you guys covered it all. They're going to go just make a bunch of new comics.
Yeah. Well, while you think, if you have a question, let me see.
Just click raise hand and I'll be able to call on you.
Yeah. So how much, with all of this in mind, for you guys, when you, David, when you write a book for Marvel, it goes off and you, do we have some questions or?
We do. We have 3 questions from the audience.
Okay. Well, yeah, let's take some of the audience questions then. Okay.
Coach Tur, you have the microphone. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Hey, this is a great forum here, but I have a question. Maybe I missed it, but do you all recommend, is there a certain software package that is available for people to write comics with?
I like Google Docs.
Yeah. I usually write in Google Docs or in I often write in text edit because I like very few distractions. However, you can search for a few folks in our industry have been good enough to put together a comics script template for writers. You can find that by searching for the standard comic script. So standard comic script, and then Steenz, who is one of the folks that put it together, Steenz, the standard comic script. And that will give you a nice template that will help you kind of like get your head around the structure of writing comics.
But if it makes you feel any better, it's not like screenwriting where like, there's one set way to write a screenplay. And if it looks funky, they're going to throw it in the trash. Comics, there is, as long as you're breaking it down, like panel to panel, line by line, page by page, there is a little bit of wiggle room for how you format it. So don't stress that. Stress just making sure that like it's paced properly and that you're not overloading the page with too many panels or too many word balloons or too many words in a word balloon. That's something that is often the kiss of death. That's really the thing that I would be more focused on.
Yeah, just to back up though, it's this universal script format is really a great tool. And if anybody has any questions, I highly recommend looking it up.
Yeah, no, it's especially if you're very new to writing comics, starting with that standard comic script and Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics, and there are few tool sets better than those two things. So.
And another thing I'll add is when you're looking at this script template, something Scott told me at one point, which was really helpful. Take a comic that you love and try to reverse engineer it using that format.
Yeah, great.
Break it down page to page, panel to panel, line to line. He said he always did Batman Year One. He would do it once a year. And that's a really good way of kind of figuring out the pacing of a comic. If you're a fan of Brian Michael Bendis's pacing, then you can kind of figure out your metric. Or if you like somebody like Rick Remender, you can figure out his metric, or Jeff Johnson. I'm just throwing random names out. You pick your favorite creators, and then you can kind of run it through this process and really learn how your voice is going to be paced.
Great question and great answers. Okay, we have another one. Branden C. He has a question. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just trying to figure it out. Am I in?
You are.
You are amplified and ready to go.
Oh yeah, no. I'm also writing for Heavy Metal. I was wondering, do you, with that the program to write comic strips, do you think there's a need for one, or are you guys completely still fine just using Google Docs?
The script is simply a template for any word processing program. You don't need a program.
So I'm actually going to jump in here as the noob to this whole process. So this is Branden. This is my first graphic novel. So Shannon and I, like she said, we wrote our script in a Google Doc, and something that she did when we were starting out, the way that we outlined Hollow, our book, was she got something off the internet. Was it this thing where it was this, and it was just it was literally just like 6 panels per page that we just printed like on my inkjet printer that I have had since college, since undergrad. And we beat the story out that way, like with gel pens on printer paper.
Yeah.
And we went, this is how long we think this scene should be.
Yeah. How many pages?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, it's not like software can be great. Like, programs and stuff can be great. At the end of the day, like, I would say, like, don't go spending money you don't need to, right? That it's like, if it's going to make your life easier, do it, but you don't need it. What you need is like your creative brain, the fire you have to tell that story, and then the tools that have been around since people have been dipping quills in ink. Like, seriously, that is my recommendation as somebody who is new to the scene. So
amazing advice.
Yeah, it's that's the cool thing about your creative process is you kind of refine it on your own, and there's a little bit of an alchemy to it. Your process probably wouldn't work for me, and my process probably wouldn't work for you. Like, not
absolutely.
one for one. It's sort of a Hieronymus machine where it works. You don't really know how it works, but it works for you. And so, like for me, I use Google Docs because it moves fast. So I don't have to like wait for like Microsoft Word or Final Draft to kind of like catch up with me. But I also use that because I usually come up with like anywhere from 3 to 6 different versions of any particular script. Anytime I hit a fork in the road, I just Control A, copy, paste it into a new copy of Google Docs, and I play around with both versions until something clicks. So I'm a big believer in Google Docs. It moves fast, it auto saves, and you can access it from literally anywhere, anybody's computer, anybody's phone, and everything else is just like 20 minutes worth of polishing when you're done.
Thanks for asking that question. Branden. He's actually one of the panelists on the next panel, and he's a creator-owned person himself. So thanks,
Awesome.
Branden.
Oh, nice.
That's Branden Columbus over there.
Hi.
So we have a
Thank you.
question.
I like this panel.
Oh, awesome. We have a question from Matt. And thank you, Matt, for like continuing on from panel to panel to panel. Matt, you have the megaphone.
Great, thank you. Hi guys, quick question. Is there a reason when it comes to fundraising, is there a reason why you chose Kickstarter over, Indiegogo or anything else like that? Is there a reason why that one's more important than any others, or end of the day, it's just like, that's the one you go with?
So, for me, sorry if I'm echoing. For me, there's a couple of reasons why I prefer Kickstarter. Some of it is the human element. I like Kickstarter's model. The limited window means Kickstarter has an incentive to promote your work. And it's a really fascinating ecosystem where anytime you back a Kickstarter project, every time that person sends an update, there will be links to a bunch of other projects. So, for example, the OZ, we got very lucky that we launched at the same time that Scott Snyder launched a Kickstarter. Scott Snyder being the writer of Batman, Justice League, all sorts of big name books. He launched a Kickstarter for a book called Noctera. And that was great. That meant we kind of got to ride that wave of everybody who backed Scott's Kickstarter was then getting all these alerts saying, oh, hey, if you like that, you might like this book, The OZ. And so that's, I think, a big thing. Whereas like Indiegogo, because it's an unlimited window and because it's so much of it's automated without the human touch, there's no incentive for people to jump in. It's much more of a steady trickle. And I think it's one that ultimately doesn't have the same kind of snowball effect as Kickstarter. But at the same time, the other thing that, I would say is it's also about reputation. Because there's the human element in Kickstarter, a lot of the more seedy content gets filtered out. It's not 100%, but whereas Indiegogo, there is a connotation that, like, say, the alt-right likes to fundraise on Indiegogo. And so you kind of have to figure out, like, who you don't want to, lie down with dogs and get fleas. So I mean, Kickstarter is sort of a win-win-win. So that's my preference over a place like Indiegogo. And I don't think there's really any other places right now that have the customer base that would give you the bang for your buck as a Kickstarter. I know there are other crowdfunding platforms that are growing, and I'm eager to see where they go. But for now, Kickstarter really, Indiegogo is really the only real rival that I think they have.
There's one called Zoop. I've had a couple signings at the store with people who've been on Zoop. I don't know anything about it, but I think that's one of those up-and-coming ones.
And what about Patreon? Has anybody tried using Patreon?
I use
Yeah.
Patreon. I have.
Yeah, we back a lot of folks on Patreon. That's it. Yeah. And know a lot of folks that get a significant amount of money.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm the editor-in-chief of Comic Speed, a website about comics, and we have a Patreon, so feel free to support us on Patreon.
Woo.
Patreon.com/comicspeed. Real fast, and do you have any more audience questions here? I think I see one, right?
We have another one from Branden. Branden, go ahead. You have the microphone.
Oh, I think I misclicked that. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Well,
anybody else have a question from the audience?
Well, we're almost out of time here. Just real fast, in lines with what I just said. We really only have like five minutes here, but very quickly, what is your preferred social media as a marketing tool? What do you think is the best bang for your buck as a marketing tool for you?
Oh boy.
I guess Twitter. I mean, I think it's ultimately a numbers game. I mean, the more you can get people, I don't think any one post on Twitter is going to be better than any one post on Facebook or any one post on Instagram. But I think for me, the way that I've always tried to approach my work is there's no stone left unturned. You know, any one post might catch somebody's attention, but if you get like 7 posts in a row, 10 posts in a row, you know, that's when people kind of really get stuck in a good way. They say, oh, well, you know, these people won't shut up about this book. I guess I better check it out. I think there was like a rule of like, I think they need to see the book 7 times in order to be persuaded. And so that's something that I always try to do. Twitter is kind of the easiest for me. It's the easiest way to kind of get the most bang for your buck. But, you know, I hear great things about TikTok. You know, Instagram's great if you're an artist, especially. So yeah, there's a lot of cool places. And now this VRCon.
Yeah, yay.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Twitter and Instagram are what I use. Branden uses Instagram primarily. It's a real weird time right now. I think, you know, TikTok, I think, is getting more and more real estate. But it really is. It's an odd, like David said, it's a numbers game. It's sort of where do you have the most people that are engaged with you and your work?
Yeah, and I think like you know, advice to any creator is also where do you think you're going to be the best?
Yeah.
Because like if you're like, oh, but Twitter, you know, I think I'll be able to like fire off the most tweets in a day or whatever, but your content isn't sort of like what people are craving or interested in, that might not be the one for you. Whereas if you're like, no, I take really, you know, dynamite video content and I'm a youth who understands how to use the TikTok, which I am not, then like that might be the one for you, you know? So I think also like knowing your own strengths in terms of how you're going to create engaging content should guide which ones you are going to market on.
I will say, learn from my mistakes. Anything that you can like preload it, because I tell you, I kick myself all the time because I'm constantly kind of reacting to whatever reviews or coverage is coming out at the moment, while trying to, you know, do my job and write my scripts on a deadline. And boy, there are days that I wish that I had just kind of front loaded a bunch of just like, hey, pre-order my book tweets, you know, and Instagram posts, and just had that, you know, preloaded for a month. That probably would have saved me a lot of hassle. So learn from my mistakes and preload whenever you can.
That is sage. Yeah,
truly.
Heidi, I think a good way to wrap this up is to kind of talk about upcoming projects and just have them plug where they can find their stuff online. But I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the fact that there was supposed to be another panelist here. If you see the few graphics over here, it says a la Brava. Kayden Phoenix unfortunately couldn't be here. She was at another convention, and she made an all Latina superhero team comprised of Jalisco, Santa, Laquita, Ruka, and Bandita. They all have their own original graphic novels, and this is a brand new one called a la Brava, where the whole team comes together. She's at latinasuperheroes.com, and we miss having her here, but maybe she'll grab the next one. I know you guys are friends with her, and she just is a machine out there at every convention and self-promoting, self-distributing, which is another whole part of being a creator-owned, you know, person like you guys are. You got to really work hard at social media and self-promotion if you don't have a big publisher behind you. So why don't you guys tell everyone what's coming up next? Obviously, Hollow is in stores next week, and you can meet these two lovely ladies in person at Golden Apple Comics if you're in Los Angeles.
Woo, please come.
Yeah, please come.
Next Sunday.
And book is out next week in comic shops everywhere, and then Hollow is out in bookstores, on Amazon, etc. You know, wherever books are sold. Please don't buy it on Amazon. Buy it somewhere else. But wherever books are sold, October 4th.
Yeah, and come to Golden Apple Sunday the 2nd, and we will sign your copy of Hollow and do it with great enthusiasm. And we would love to meet you.
Yeah, and I will sign any Lumberjanes that you bring. I love the greatest thing is a bunch of folks now who were kids when Lumberjanes came out are now teens or in college. Woof. Very intense for me, but they bring their issues and it's very cute. And so please bring your issues, Lumberjanes.
And yeah, as for me, I've been doing a lot of work at Marvel lately. I just started a 2-part story for Fantastic Four that just came out this week. Fantastic Four number 47 by me and Juan Cabal. And I'm also the ongoing writer of Savage Avengers, which just ended its first arc the previous week. So you can pick those up anywhere comics are sold. You can also pick up my creator-owned work, Spencer and Locke, Going to the Chapel, and Scout's Honor at your local comic shop. And if you're interested in the OZ, you can visit my website at davidpepose.com, and I will gladly sell you a copy.
Awesome, guys.
Awesome.
We also have all these works at, again, your local comic book store. If you're in LA, Golden Apple, we support them heavily. And this is so great to put together a panel of people who, have tried so hard to just get into the industry and stay in the industry and work in different facets of it, from Kickstarter to editors to, creating OGNs. So thanks for taking the time out to be in our awesome VR conference, FanConXR.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so
It was-
much.
Thank you.
What a
This
great
is
first
thank
VR
you.
experience. Yeah.
Thank you so
Oh,
much. Yeah,
fantastic.
thank you,
And I'm-
everyone.
And
Thank you
thank
for
you for
joining us
watching
in VR.
us.
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you.
You can't see it, but I'm waving. Thanks, everybody.
All right, I'm waving
so much,
too.
everyone. Yeah, so am I. It's happening.
Yay.
Woo!
Yeah.
Thanks so much, y'all.
All right.
What do we do? What do we turn this on?
How do we leave?
I don't know.
So actually, that's
Great
a really good
question.
point.
Great question,
So
Heidi.
Let's talk
is
to
a good-
everybody about.
So this
It's
is
a
a
good
good
segue.
segue. So we have another panel coming up after this, Heavy Metal After Dark.